What's happening, everyone? My partner's Ian's keeping it real. What's happening, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of our controversial Rescore series. We've done over 40 of these rescores, and we've saved the best for last, and this is part one of our two-part finale. And I got the homie Nopal Boxeanos with us, George with Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA, and special guest D-Style Boxing. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. We're going to get into it. Canelo Golovkin won the controversial rescore. We're going to go back and find out if this really was a robbery. I think this is probably the most controversial fight of this era. So let's get right into it. George, let's kick it off with you, homie. How did you have the fight, and do you consider it to be a robbery?
Well, again, thank you for having me on, D-Styles. It's good to see you, brother. Welcome on to El Chile. I mean, I've been on here a little over maybe 5-6 months, and I don't think we've had you on I don't think I've seen you on as a guest yet, and it's an honor, man. Thank you for coming on with the guys and me. But I'm back to this. This is the show we've all been talking about for like the last couple months. This is a good one for me. I really enjoyed this fight. Rescoring this. Okay, first of all, first time I watched this live, watching my dad, my brother, my dad, family, everybody's watching the fight along with us. Watching this, it's everything you expected. There was the fireworks, the excitement. Finally, because you had two of the best guys at the time at 160. So it was what we all expected, all the fireworks, the excitement and stuff, like I said. But watching this live for the first time I watched this, I believe I was in the majority that Triple G, that people thought that Triple G won this fight. So watching it, not scoring it the way we normally score here on El Chile here, I had it maybe 7 rounds to 5, 8 or 8-4, at least in my mind, without having to notate what I thought each guy did in each round. So I originally scored it, yes, for Triple G, watching it live with a couple of beers in me, excitement, all the fun stuff that you have when you're having a fight party. Now, here we are, El Chile with Chicano and the crew. I had to watch this 2 times, man. I had to watch this 2 more times because, I mean, what I was looking for in each round from each guy, it just seemed like it was a little bit different. Like my scoring from watching it the second time, I'm like, wait a minute, this can't be right. But it turns out that's exactly the way I saw it. And I'll just say I agreed with Letterman's scorecard. I mean, not Letterman, Merchant, that it was 9 rounds to 3. I know this is pro Canelo. Please don't kill me. Don't hate me, guys. Please don't make this. Let me be my last episode with you guys. But like I said, I had to watch this 2 times to make sure at least what I thought without the way I scored it, the way I saw it. But here we go. First round, I had Triple G winning the first round. And I thought he won this, obviously, using the jab, kept his distance. Canelo moved well, of course, laterally. And I know in watching this, or when people were watching this fight, the criticism that Canelo had in this was he stayed too much to the ropes, pretty much most of half of the fight. I would say from about round 4 or even 5, he started to kind of stay along the ropes, looking for counters. I get it. That's Canelo's style, especially when he's in there with a guy that he can get out of there with some good counter shots to the body, maybe to the head. So I'm still gonna continue on with the criticism that with this for Canelo was he was looking for the counter too much along the ropes, hope to land like that one good shot, because that's what he's known for, is landing that one good shot, hurting the guy, getting him out of there as soon as he could. But first round, like I said, I had going to Triple G, and then I had Nella winning 2 and 3, and from there I had Triple G winning pretty much 4 all the way to 11, and with my notes here, like I said, round 4, I thought Triple G won pretty much off combinations. This is where I say he was pushing Nella to the ropes. Nella was looking to counter, which I get what he was trying to do. He was trying to land those shots against the ropes. But I think what Triple G was doing is he may have not been hitting them hard shots. And I know when you have judges score the fight, they score it off differently. When I score a fight, I watch off activity, points, because obviously that's what it is scored off of, right? Like some of the criteria, even though nowadays you don't get every judge to go off of the criteria of scoring a fight. But for me, like I said, in this one, this is what I felt Triple G was doing. I felt like Triple G was the jab. If jab is obviously an important part of the fight. It could be either your defense, it could be your offense. It could set up your power shots. It can get you out of trouble, get you into landing your best shots. And I felt like this is what he was doing a good majority of the fight, and it showed. I think they had Triple G. I think maybe about like the 8th round, he was pretty much obviously outlanding Canelo with the jabs. Again, fourth round, I started telling us that he was moving to the ropes. I also notated that I remember maybe about midway through the fight, like my dad, he was a big Canelo fan. We made his Canelo shirts. He had his Canelo hat. He's yelling at the TV, your typical Mexican dad, getting angry, get the hell off the ropes. My dad used to punch the air, because I mean, this is how passionate he was about boxing. He felt like he was in there, and it was awesome to see my dad do this. So, I mean, if my dad was yelling at this, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna agree. Yeah, that was what Canelo was doing wrong in this fight. Was he was trying to stay too much under the ropes. He moved really well though laterally. I will say he did do that. Again, 4 through 11, I had Triple G winning this fight. And I'm not saying that it was pretty much he was dominating these rounds, because Canelo was landing. Maybe he would land 1 or 2 good shots. Triple G would answer back, and I think that's what Triple G was doing in this fight. Was he knew he was getting hit. He felt like he had to answer back, and that's what you saw him do. He would answer back. I see him do like a jab, uppercut, left hook, and then straight rights, which is his bread and butter. That 1-2. He landed a good 1-2. I think it was right around the 10th round. 4 through 11. Again, like I said, Triple G. I had him winning this fight. I know I'm pretty sure we might talk about the Adelaide Bird scorecard, the 118, 110, and that whole controversy with that all started. I remember now watching it all over again, how much that got everybody going, people upset. And what to me, what really sucked about that was it took away from how exciting this fight was. It was very close, very competitive. And then I also got written down what I have here for swing rounds. So swing rounds were 2, 3, 8, 10, 11, and 12. So again, those rounds they're swing rounds because they could have went either way. But what I was looking for in these rounds was who was going to finish the round off, and who was getting a little bit more, who was getting the points off. As far as a robbery, I think people say, or call it a robbery because of that score. Now that I think about it, is the 118, 110. But I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna stick with say this, and I'm not gonna say it was a robbery. Again, I had Triple G winning 9-3.
All right, so you had Triple G winning 9-3, and you said it was. Did I hear you right that it was not a robbery? Or
Yeah,
what?
not a robbery.
All right. Well, thank you so much, George, and thanks for taking us back, man. I think sometimes we forget how exciting that fight was. We waited what at the time felt like a long time, 2 years to get that fight, right? And just for a little bit of context, everybody, Canelo came in as the Lineal and Ring Magazine champion, and Gennady Golovkin, he came in as the IBF and WBA and WBC champion. Canelo was previously the WBC champion, but he dropped the belt, and the WBC awarded it to Golovkin, but Canelo was not fighting for that belt. So there was all kinds of trinkets and all kinds of status involved in this fight. So it was very high profile at the time. 1.3 million pay-per-view buys, and Alive gave 27 million, which was the 3rd largest at the time. And I want to give a shout out to some people who are in the house. Nando Yamas, thanks for joining us, man. And he says, some folks were never going to give Canelo the first because of the narrative bias, or the second one because they felt robbed. Puro Suitors in the house. Welcome. JC with the running emoji. Man, I know you're not talking about Canelo, brother. Koala is here. Ryan O'Hara, thanks for joining us. And he had it. 116, 112 for Triple G. Well, thank you, man. We appreciate that. All right, dude. Well, let's get into it a little bit more.
Can I add something really quick? I'm sorry. I forgot. I just want to add this real fast. Out of all the guys, obviously, that we've seen Triple G won, everybody was calling for that one big fight that they wanted to see him do. To me, out of watching Triple G fights, I feel He won this, of course, but I also feel like this was probably his best performance of his career. I just wanted to leave with that. I felt like this was his best performance of the year, and you could see it. Like he knew what was at hand, what he was expected. And then like one more thing, real quick, and you saw what Canelo win, the 12th round, and you see what he did in 12th round. He took it over into the second fight, and that was he pushed the fight to Triple G, and Triple G we saw what Triple G when he fought Murata, when he fought Derenchenko, that he wasn't doing really well when someone was able to stand in that box with him and make him uncomfortable, and that's what Canelo did in that second fight.
Excellent, man. Thank you. And we're going to get into all of that here in just a little bit. The shoe shine, Dave from the 408 has chimed in. He says it was a blatant robbery. And Ryan O'Hara says a close score doesn't necessarily mean it wasn't a robbery. For instance, all three judges scored Canelo Bivol 115, 113 and gave Canelo the first 4 rounds. Laughable. Well, there you go. D-Style Boxing. Tell us what you think, man. How'd you have this fight, and do you consider it to be a robbery?
All right, I'll go through this as quickly as I can. I was on mute there. I apologize. Canelo Triple G, the first fight, round 1. Canelo is sort of the note. I just watched the fight this morning. Canelo makes himself move. He's moving to the left. Okay, he voluntarily does that. It's not like Gennady Golovkin was doing it to him. So he allowed. Golovkin was the aggressor for the most part in this fight. But I'm going to touch on some things here. Canelo stops and stays in the pocket when he's throwing punches at Gennady Golovkin. It's not like he's moving and throwing punches on his back foot. And I think that's a very important thing to be said, because the narrative that was being brought in by the HBO announcers, especially in Lampley, was that the Gennady Golovkin was the aggressor the whole fight. And that's not, while he was the aggressor for most of the fight, it's not, he was not the aggressor for the whole fight. And that is very, very important, right? And he's using words like, or phrases, I should say, like he's mounting the offense. You cannot describe round 1 as Gennady Golovkin mounting the offense. Whatever the fuck that means. I don't know what that means, okay? I scored that round 10-9 because Canelo landed the best shots. He landed the body shots. He was landing the most shots in that round. I honestly, if Letterman doesn't score that round for Gennady Golovkin, I honestly don't think anyone, including George, scores round 1 for Gennady Golovkin. That's got to be honest. All right, that's my opinion. All right, round 2. Just throw shots. No, but round 2. All right. At the very beginning of the round, Max Kellerman just throws out, after they're reading the CompuBox scores, he says, I quote, I don't think Gennady Golovkin landed that many punches. And then he's cut off by Jim Lampley, who says, I did. I saw him land those punches. Look at the punch stats. Well, that's not what Max Kellerman is challenging the actual punch stats. Punch stats in boxing are not the same as like yardages in the NFL or nothing like that. You cannot count them the same, right? They never go back and revise and correct them, which they should, because people look at these numbers like they're ironclad, and they're not. Okay, they're just not. If you watch that round, he did not land that many punches. With that said, a couple of notes here. A lot of look at the jabs he's throwing jabs. That's the language he kept using. Lampley did, but they weren't landing a lot of them. You could say he's throwing jabs, but are they landing? At 2:05 marker of round 2, okay, Canelo lands. Lampley's talking about the weight. They're talking about other stuff while Canelo is landing the punches, all right? So I just want to go ahead and, point that out. I give at the 1 minute and 37 minutes left, by the way. We're counting from 3 minutes down, by the way. Okay, at that mark, Roy says, ironically, no clean punches have been landed while Canelo lands a clean punch. All right. Also, they were also making the note, no one's landed any clean headshots. Meanwhile, Canelo landing clean body shots. Okay, and I don't think that was being said. Another thing, and this went on in round 3. By the way, I give round 2 to Canelo. I give round 3 to Canelo. It was a lot of the same, by the way. But one thing I want to say before I speed up to the rest of the rounds, it's not going to take that long for the other rounds. They kept the narrative of, the real fight hasn't broke out yet, as if these rounds aren't important. I want to remind everybody, every round is just as important as the other one, every single one of them. All right. Now, in round 3, Canelo blocks a hook. Meanwhile, Lampley shouts out, he just landed a nice left hook. All right. The last 10 seconds, Triple G throws a right and a left. The right lands, I believe, on the chest, if it landed, which it's a counting blow. But he shouts out, right hand and a hook by Triple G. Meanwhile, he blocked the hook. I rewatched it like 3-4 times. He did not land that hook, right? Another thing about round 3, Gennady Golovkin landed a really good punch, and it's the only punch that they really just shot out there. Just want to put that out. Round 4, Canelo, that's when he starts getting against the ropes, okay? Jim Lampley, of course, gets excited and or whatnot. Look, Triple G won that round, but I don't think he landed very clean for most of that round, if I'm honest. He just didn't. Right? Round 5, Canelo is back against the ropes. At a minute 48 seconds, they ignore a hook landed by Canelo. At a minute 22 seconds left, clean right by Canelo, again ignored. Big right hand by Triple G. That's the neck shot. It lands on the neck. Jim Lampley has an orgasm live on HBO, okay, and everybody gave him round 5, I'm sorry, because of that punch landed. I'm going to come back to this clean punch landed, okay? Canelo, he's against the ropes a lot in this round, but I just believe he did better work. Okay, on the move, he's making a miss a lot. He's landing to the body, and I think those punches go ignored. Round 4, I'm in the minority here probably, but I actually give that round to Canelo. I'm not going to give that round because of that one big shot that Gennady Golovkin landed on the neck. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do it. Round 6, a lot of trading, Canelo body shots, pressure. Now, this is the real round where Triple G was pressuring Canelo. He was dictating the pace. I would say Triple G really was a general in this round without a shadow of a doubt. One of the best rounds for Gennady Golovkin. 10-9, Gennady Golovkin all day. Round 7, another round for Gennady Golovkin. Canelo landing very clean early on. And by the way, even though Gennady won this round, it's very important to say this. At the beginning of round 7, they go to Letterman. And while Canelo's landing, Letterman says, there you go. You see, he takes some shots and then backs him up. What do you mean? He's landing shots on him, bro. But he somehow turned it into a positive for Gennady Golovkin. Okay, but either way, 2 minutes of that round was controlled by Gennady Golovkin. Nonetheless, so that round 7 was a Gennady Golovkin round for me. Round 8, this was a very, very close round. Big right by Canelo early. All right. I just think Triple G landed some jabs in this round. And and I don't know, like Lampley was calling it a telephone jab. Like he was really like kind of selling the jab a little too much, right? In my opinion, all right. In round 8, they were in the middle round for the most part. I think Canelo did some excellent body work. Okay, big uppercuts by Canelo. Okay, while he was against the ropes, he landed a beautiful uppercut on Triple G. Triple G is missing a lot. That's a big part of my notes. And Jim Lampley cheerleading a lot. Very close round, but I scored a 10-9 Canelo. Round 9, another close round, very similar. At a minute and 33, go watch round 9, guys. At a minute and 33 seconds left, I'm giving you the timestamps. Canelo lands the best punch of the night. He turns Triple G's whole head, and they don't act the way earlier with Triple G landed one punch and they wanted to give him the whole round. Now, Triple G won this round. He won round 9 on my card, but they ignored the punch. All right. I'm not going to give Canelo the round just because he landed one big punch, but they didn't call the punch for him. Right. Lampley was like, yeah, Canelo, you landed a couple counters right there. He said something like that. The shit was ridiculous. But round 9, close, but I gave it to Triple G. Round 10, I think Canelo took control in this round. It's my opinion. Very close round. I think he started very, very, very strong in the round. All right. I'm sorry. I apologize. Round 10, I gave it to Triple G, but it was very, very close. Round 11, I gave it to Canelo. I thought it was a good boxing round. I think Canelo outboxed him. Round 12, I think that was Canelo all day. I don't think you could give that round. Gennady tried to steal the round at the end, but it's not enough, buddy. Okay. At the end, I scored the fight, right? 7-5 for Saul Canelo Alvarez. And I think it's a very solid 7 rounds for Canelo.
All right. Thank you very much, D-Style. So we have it 2-0 for not a robbery. George has Gennady Golovkin winning, and D-Style has Canelo Alvarez winning. Nopal, what do you think about all this, brother? Or I can go. We can't hear you, man. So I'm going to go ahead and give my scorecard because you know what? I see things very similarly to how D-Style talks about it because we have a pretty similar scorecard. I saw almost everything the same way D-Style did. I think the first 3 rounds were pretty clear for Canelo Alvarez. I thought Canelo did a really good job counterpunching, as well as good boxing in the center of the ring. I think he commanded the center of the ring at will when he wanted to for the first portion of the fight, and then at times in the second half of the fight. Now, Triple G did have a late rally, and I'm going to talk about that here in a second. Also, Canelo had very good body punching in those first 3 rounds, clear counter punching, and I felt like Gennady Golovkin was a little bit too timid in those first 3 rounds. I'm sure it was because of the respect of the power that he was getting from Canelo, but you can even hear Abel Sanchez after the 3rd round try to correct Triple G and say, hey, Canelo's pulling away, like, start getting on it. And then you start seeing the tide turn. There's a little bit of a dynamic shift in round 4, but I still think that's a swing round. I gave it to Triple G, but just because it looks like Triple G's doing better, to me, that doesn't necessarily mean that Triple G wins the round. But it was competitive, and then Canelo started doing a little bit more back foot movement, not standing his ground as much. Now, and one of the things I want to correct when people go back and talk about this fight, especially if they haven't rewatched it, there's this idea that Canelo was running around the ring. I think there's a big difference between moving on the back foot and being backed up and running. And there were times, and I want to say rounds 7, 8, and 9, and possibly 6, where Canelo was not engaging enough, and that did cost him in my mind. So I gave Canelo round 5, and my notes for that say that it's a close round outside of that one flush shot that we all talk about, but Canelo was dictating the pace of that round, where it's being held, and he's connecting well too. And so I ended up giving that one to Canelo. And then, like I mentioned, Triple G has his sweep where he comes on strong. Rounds 6, 7, but I agree with D-Style. 8, in my opinion, was a damn close round. It's competitive with Canelo landing some clean leather, but Triple G pushing the issue a little bit more, and winning with his effective aggression. So I did give him the nod in that round. And I felt like round 9 was more of that. So I gave that round to Triple G. And then Canelo closed it out, in my opinion. Like D-Style said, in that 10th round, you see Canelo make his stand. You start seeing a pattern. He starts making his stand in the first minute, but he starts getting faded a little bit towards the end of each round. But in the beginning, he'll go in, throw his shots, throw hard, throw clean. And then the second 2 minutes is kind of like Triple G trying to get his in, but they're not as clean. They're not as flush. And when I'm scoring fights, I'm looking at multiple things. I'm looking at defense within the pocket. Okay. That counts for something, in my opinion. It's one of the parameters. People look at defense differently, but I scored defense in the pocket. Canelo's defense was excellent. Now, I think his poker face wasn't that good because you could tell that Canelo was tired, but if he was sitting there smiling, doing all that defensive shit, it would look a whole lot different. The guy was moving, and he was slipping shots. He was sliding. He was blocking. On top of that, I've always said that power can offset volume. You could see that with my scores with Diaz Malignaggi, Pacquiao versus Marquez 3, and Canelo versus Lara. It's clear to me in this fight, and based on what happens afterwards, I think we all know who the real power puncher is of the two. And I think that Canelo's power offset Triple G's volume. And so I have this score 7-5 for Canelo. Definitely not a robbery, although I could have easily had given it to Triple G. Like there was enough swing rounds to give it to Triple G 8-4, possibly. But when I watched it the last time, that's not how I had it. I had it for Canelo. Definitely not a robbery. That's how I had it. Nopal, what do you think about all this, brother?
Gotta say, man, started off by saying thank you guys, man. You guys had a lot of good back and forth on this, and I agree with you guys basically. Round 1 is very interesting to me because I rewatched that round about 100 times, and seriously, I do not see Triple G connecting at all. He's missing a lot of shots. They're barely reaching, and Canelo's blocking all of those shots. And it's a very interesting round, but I gotta say, I gave it to Canelo. I've always given it to him, and I could never understand when people try to give that round to Triple G. Nevertheless, there's a lot of people that give that round to Triple G. Rounds 2 or 3, basically, I score them for Canelo. I think most people do score those rounds, Number 4, yeah, I think it was kind of a swing round. They both did okay. That's when Triple G started getting a little confident. The thing with Triple G this whole fight is, there's a lot of narratives that went around. The narratives is that, he basically made Canelo, he had to chase Canelo down. But here's the thing, he wasn't really. It was like an illusion. It's almost like he had his chance because Canelo would stop in the middle of the ring and then Triple G would stop. He wouldn't capitalize on so much that he could have did. You know what I mean? And he really never wanted the fight. It seemed like he didn't want to engage in stuff. Once he had Canelo where he wanted him, he never really wanted to engage. Even Canelo's calling him in to do a little bit more work. So basically gave the middle rounds to Triple G. Some of these are swing rounds though, but I know round 9 most people give it to Triple G, but I just thought that Canelo did some really good work. Yes, Canelo was kind of not used to that weight, and I think that the muscle gain did slow him down a little bit, but nevertheless, that didn't stop him from landing all the highlight punches of the whole fight. When you look at highlights of this fight.
Nopal, you're muted. Are you disconnected, brother? All right. Well, we're going to wait until Nopal comes back, but I want to read some comments. Go ahead, brother.
I gave Canelo rounds 9 to 12, and I ended up having this fight 7 rounds to 5 for Canelo.
All right. Thank you very much, Nopal. Well, we have 3 victories for Canelo. George has Triple G winning. It's unanimous, not a robbery. I want to read off some comments here. Nando says, don't underestimate how much being a huge boxing media darling has benefited Triple G from day one. Calix Boxing 2.0 has chimed in. Thank you for scoring this one, brother. And he says 116, 112, Triple G. But was it a robbery, man? That's what we want to know. Was it a robbery? Team Batman Boxing is in the house. Chauncey Pearls, thank you for joining us. Nando also makes another point. Unless they're Cuban, Latin fighters rarely get credit for their defense, parrying punches, head movement, etc. And I think that's a really good point. A lot of people don't really highlight how good Canelo's defense was in this fight, and I think there's multiple reasons. One, I think that people wanted a little bit more from Canelo. I think they anticipated a bit of a war. We all really wanted this fight, and so I want to open this up to have an open discussion with you guys. I want to know, now that we've talked about it, why do you think that people think this was such a controversial fight? Why are people so angry at this result? D-Style, let's start with you, brother.
I do believe that HBO, to a certain degree, played a role in this. Like maybe to you guys it's not, but to the casual viewer, to a lot of people that watch, they put a lot of stock. Like if they see the expert scorer putting that Canelo lost 9-3, and then Canelo win, or he didn't win, but it's a draw. But one of the scorecards was the Adelaide Bird scorecard was wide, without a shadow of a doubt, right? But I think that's what it was at the end of the day. I just and I know Harold said, that type of stuff plays a role in every fight, but it honestly shouldn't. I just wish commentators would just call the fight. Just call the fight. Guys are landing punches. You should be calling those punches. You shouldn't be talking about your little narratives and trying to tell a story of the fight. And then it has a real fight broke out yet. And all this other stuff doesn't matter. Just let's watch the fights round by round. I think that played a role in it, to be honest with you. But I'll tell you right now, everything starts and ends with round 1. I've noticed the pattern. Whoever scored round 1 for Triple G, they had Triple G winning the fight. If they scored round 1 for Canelo, they either had it a draw or they scored it for Canelo. That's just a pattern I've noticed. I've never seen anyone, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know anyone that scored round 1 for Canelo and then still had Triple G winning 9-3 or 8-4 or something. I've never seen it. Right? Round 1 tells you the whole story, because if you once you set a precedent that he won round 1, it's going to be very hard for you to give him all the other rounds to Canelo. That is, if you can't give Canelo round 1, You ain't going to give him round 5. You're not going to give him round 6. You're not going to give him round 7 because that's a precedent you set for the most part. You know what I mean? It all starts with round 1, in my opinion.
All right. Thank you so much, D-Sal. Calix Boxing is in the house. Thanks for joining us, brother. Well, I'm glad you're here to, maybe even things out a little bit. And like I said, Calix is one of the most objective people I know. So, man, you gave us your score in the chat, but, do you consider it to be a robbery? What are your thoughts on this fight, Calix?
Do y'all hear me good?
Yes, sir.
All right. I think I heard D-Style say earlier he scored the first 4 rounds for Canelo. Is that correct?
No. First 3. I give round 4 to Triple G.
Okay. All right. Good. Now, I didn't see at any point Canelo win 3 straight rounds in this fight. He came close to it in the last 3 rounds, though, because I had the 10th round a swing round. There were 4 rounds that I had as swing rounds in this fight, and I scored them 2-2. I had them going both ways. Man, it's hard for me to see 115, 113 Canelo. Like, I think you really had to be looking and giving him the benefit of the doubt on everything to get to 115, 113, 114, 114, okay, a draw. Certainly not 118, 110, one of the official scorecards for this fight. But I had rounds 4 scored 2-2. I had round 1 to Golovkin, rounds 2 and 3 to Canelo, and round 4 to Golovkin. Where I would agree with D-Style, and I caught most of his commentary, that's why I'm singling out D-Style, is from what I remember, like I watched the second time this morning and scored it without the sound on. I just wasn't going to have the sound on while I was scoring. But the first time I watched the fight live, I remember HBO being not giving Canelo enough credit for what he was doing early in the fight. So I would agree with D-Style there. However, as I'm watching this fight, Canelo was more back foot heavy than I remembered watching. This is the first time I watched this fight in probably a couple of years, and I don't remember him being on the back foot as much as he was in this fight. He was back foot pedaling, fighting off the ropes, and he was not consistent with his output. And yes, he was better. He was better than they give him credit for defensively. I once again agree with D-Style there. However, his counterpunching was not all that great, to be honest, and his output and his activity was uneven throughout the fight. And that's why the middle rounds were heavy Golovkin, like heavy. And I didn't remember it being that way as well, off the top of my head. But
I mean, let me just say this really quick, Alex. So I gave rounds 6, 7, 9, and 10 to Gennady. So I agree that the middle rounds were his his wheelhouse.
Right. Now I gave 4 through 10 to Golovkin, 4 through 10. And I felt 4 and 5 were the swing rounds. And I also felt 3 and 11 were swing rounds, and I gave 3 and 11 to Canelo. I made a note of this. The 10th round to me was the best round of the fight, the 10th and the 12th. And both of those rounds, those are the only 2 rounds that I saw in this fight where Canelo fought off of his front foot consistently. The other 10 rounds, he fought off of his back foot for most of the rounds, and he was giving up rounds. Yes, he was landing at a higher percentage, yes, but he wasn't throwing enough in those rounds. And the pace of this fight was a Golovkin pace. He was front foot, Canelo was back foot. He was better at the jab than I think people are giving him credit for. And on top of that, he was better defensively than people are giving him credit for. When Canelo was throwing a lot of these counter punches off of the ropes, Golovkin was slipping them as well. So this was more of a defensive battle than people expected going into the fight. But the reason that Canelo was better in the second fight was he watched the film and he realized I got to be more on my front foot than I was in the first fight. He just was not on his front foot enough in this fight. And this fight was fought at Golovkin's pace, and it was fought on Golovkin's terms. And that's why I say, like, I think you really have to reach to get to
I
7
just
rounds.
don't agree that this whole fight was fought under his terms. When I feel like, and even Roy Jones would disagree with you. Roy Jones was saying, "Hey, Canelo's doing what he wants to do here. He's controlling this fight." And then people were arguing with Roy Jones. It does depend on what I don't like. Roy Jones doesn't strike me as like a Canelo fanboy, and he has to like, oh man, I got a caller for him. No, he sounds like the guy that he's a professional boxer that used to fight, that understands what's going on in the ring. I'll give you the middle rounds all day. That's when Gennady was pushing. He was pushing Canelo back and pushing the pace. But early on, if you watch, ding ding, round 1, Canelo starts circling left. That's not Gennady Golovkin doing that. He's doing that, and then he would stop, stay in the pocket, and throw body shots, and he wasn't throwing on the back foot, right? He wasn't doing like a Tyson Fury or like a Larry Holmes with a jab while he's on his back foot, or like that's not what he was doing. He would start circling the ring. It was pretty neutral. I call it neutral grounds, when not one guy is being on the front foot or back foot. When they were exchanging punches, or when Canelo was throwing, and then he was making Gennady Golovkin follow him. That's the only disagreement I would have. That early in the fight, it was not Gennady Golovkin's pace. I think Gennady made it his pace in the middle rounds. He took control of the fight. But what I will say, and I'll go back to it. However, like people could just like this whole fight, just ask people how they scored the first round. They scored the first round for Gennady Golovkin. They had Gennady Golovkin winning. If they scored for Canelo, it's either a draw or Canelo winning.
I want to give a shout out to Chauncey Pearls, who's here. Thanks so much for joining us. And he says, I didn't score any of the Triple G Canelo fights, but I would lean more towards Triple G in the first fight. But a draw is fair. But Canelo clearly won a close fight in the second. I also want to give a shout out to Team Batman Boxing. So, Calix, did I hear you right that a draw is fair? So, in your opinion, not a robbery? What are your thoughts on that? And then keep on going, brother.
Yeah, I had it 116, 112, Golovkin. I thought in my mind, he clearly won the fight, but swing rounds, like, I think you could get to a draw. Like 115, 113, Canelo, I think, is a heavy reach. But robbery is such a strong word, so I would shy away. I would say no, not a robbery. I would shy away from robbery here. Robbery is a strong word. And 118, 110, Canelo was the one that I had a huge issue with. There's always that one scorecard, at least when it comes to a Canelo fight, unfortunately. But yes, I could see how they get to a draw. So no, I don't see this as a robbery. I just don't. But I just go back to, this was the Bivol fight was the first fight I've seen since this first Golovkin fight where Canelo had trouble landing at a high percentage. He had trouble with Golovkin's defense. He had trouble with Golovkin's jab. And the same case, even more extreme, though, when it came to Bivol. I just think that Golovkin's not getting enough credit for what he did defensively in his first fight. Because Canelo was missing a lot, too. Let's be honest. So I just think the pace of the fight and the terms of the fight were fought on Golovkin's terms. But the 10-point must system can be deceptive. So I can see how people can watch this fight and not score it and say, oh, this is clearly a robbery because this is Golovkin's fight. It's Golovkin's fight. I can see how people can watch this fight, not score it round by round and see it as a robbery. But if you look at it round by round, 12 rounds as each his own fight, I could see how you could have the first round to Canelo, or the 10th round to Canelo. And if you do that, my scorecard flips to a draw, just right there. But yes, the first 4 rounds were close. Canelo was doing a lot of good work in those rounds. Middle rounds went heavy to Golovkin, in my opinion. And then the championship rounds, Canelo dug deep, particularly the 10th and the 12th. Canelo started fighting on his front foot. You can tell he was tired, but he fought on his front foot. And those were the 2 best rounds in the fight. I still thought Golovkin won the 10th round, but 11th and 12th, I had Canelo winning those rounds. So early rounds, in the championship rounds, I thought Canelo made this a tight fight, because otherwise this fight was fought on Golovkin's terms. So 116, 112 on my scorecard for Golovkin, but not a robbery.
All right. Thank you so much. And I want to give a shout out to MFB, who's in the house, and Brian, the boxing historian. He says that Triple G got robbed in the first fight. And George H., thanks for being here. He says HBO commentary is exclusive to an American audience. They have influence for sure, but not if you can't hear them. And, and the other thing I wanted to talk about, Kyle, is you mentioned how we weren't used to seeing Canelo on the back foot. And that's true in a way. We're used to Canelo as a counter puncher. That's why we thought this fight would be good, because we're used to Triple G moving forward. And I think before this fight, we were all used to seeing Triple G cut off the ring and be super aggressive. He did have those mid to late rounds, like in a dominant fashion where he was winning and kind of moving forward, but I didn't see any time where he was actively cutting off the ring. Like D-Style said, he's circling one way most of the time at will. Triple G never really pushes that issue, and there's a reason. I mean, I think that there was some clear, excellent counter punching, some strong shots coming back. Triple G couldn't just do whatever he wanted. Did he dictate the pace of the fight? To me, I think it's mixed. It depends on the rounds that we're talking about.
Yeah, I want to add to that too. I mean, like I said, these rounds are very close. That's why, like for me, when I scored this, I had more than like 4 rounds that were swing rounds. I was really close to actually giving Canelo, like everybody here is like the 10th round, or I mean the 11th round. I was really close to giving Canelo the 11th. I would say in back foot. I mean, it maybe not, but my opinion, I just felt like from the first round, like you guys are saying, he's moving, he's making Triple G follow him, and that's the style of Canelo, right? That's the counter shot. He's trying to look to land those big shots, and he did land some big shots, I think, in those counters. Anywhere between, middle round, the meat of the fight, those middle rounds. I think he landed some good shots, but I feel like you, Chicano, you said you would put over the power shots for the volume, but I just feel like for me the volume is what mattered and what Triple G was doing. And yeah, I don't think maybe the jab he didn't get too much credit for or not, but I feel like I said, the jab is pretty much going to dictate most of how that fight's going to go. Even though he didn't cut the ring off very well, I think again Canelo was looking, to counter, so that's why you see him, moving to his left, moving to the right, trying to bring in Triple G, so that way he could land those counters. But Triple G was smart enough to stay on the outside and not smother himself. And Triple G didn't really smother himself too much in this fight until you saw like towards the end when Canelo actually stepped forward. And going into the second fight, of course, watching the film, I feel the 12th round is where Canelo took whatever it was that he did in that 12th round and implemented in the second fight. I mean, it's I don't know. Again, I think this is why I feel like Triple G won this, and I think, like I said, if I give Canelo that 11th round, of course, it's a little bit closer, but I don't see how you can win. Looking obviously the counter, landing one good shot, maybe 2, 3 good shots per round, but I just feel it was the volume for me that wanted for Triple G.
Yeah, but the problem with the volume is you got to land too.
I feel like he was landing. I mean, they both were. I think they both missed shots. I mean,
everyone misses shots in every fight. Everyone lands shots. Like what I'm saying is, Triple G was missing significantly though. Like it's not like it's not like
he missed a lot of shots.
Well, look, it's. I get it. Anybody could say about any fight, yeah, but he was missing too. Everyone land like very few. Like if you land at 50%, that's a high percentage. You're missing half of your punches. That's not the point I'm making. What I'm saying is that Gennady Golovkin himself, throughout this fight, even the commentators were saying, hey, Gennady, he hasn't really landed that big headshot. None of these guys had landed any of the big headshots. Why were they saying? Now they weren't counting the fact that what we do know is that one guy was landing body shots. Who was that? We all know who that was. Yeah. Canelo was landing body shots, and I feel body shots count just as much as a headshot. And if you're big body shots, Gennady didn't really start going to the body until Abel Sanchez told him something about it, like after round 4 or something. Like, so I think that went ignored by some people, in my opinion. It's just opinion here, but very few rounds are consensus here. Like round 1, obviously, like Calix and George give that round to Gennady Golovkin. Round 2 did anybody give round 2 to Triple G?
No,
right? So that's clearly a Canelo round, okay? Did anybody give him round? Who gave Gennady Golovkin round 3?
I put swing round, but I gave it to Canelo.
George, you give that to Canelo?
Yeah, I gave it to Canelo. I gave Canelo 2-3. I mean, yeah, 2 and 3.
He was doubting himself. I'm gonna go there just really quick. Round 4, obviously that one is split. Round 5, anybody give that round to Triple G?
Yep.
Yes.
No, but I could have. It was a swing for me.
I gave it to Golovkin. Round 5.
I did too.
I had it as a swing round as well. I gave it to round 6. I gave that to Golovkin. Did anybody give it to Canelo?
No.
I didn't. Round 7. Did anybody give it to Canelo?
No.
Nope.
All right. So far, we're 2-2 with clear, like as far as across the board. Round 8. I give it to Canelo. Anybody give it to Triple G?
Yes. Yep. Triple G.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're done with that. Round 9. Anybody give it to Canelo?
No.
No.
Nobody? Okay, so that's a Triple G. Okay. Did anybody give him round 10? Did anybody give it to Triple G or
Yes.
Canelo?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Canelo.
I gave it to Canelo.
Yeah, that was a really close round. Round 11. Did anybody give that round to Triple G?
No.
I did, and I think that was a really close round for me. And I just, like I said, I leaned with Triple G on that one.
Okay, round 12. Did anybody give it to Triple G?
Nope.
No.
Okay. So on my scorecard, this, of course, this is a small sample size. Across the board, rounds 2, 3, and 12, everyone on the panel gave it to Canelo. Round 6, 7, and 9, everyone gave it to Triple G. As far as across the board, that's 3 rounds each. That basically, as the panel at large, rounds 1, 4, 5, 8, 10, 11, all those rounds, the whole panel didn't agree. It's a close fight.
Yeah, very
Is-
exactly. That's what I think.
That's why we say not a robbery.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
That's why I say not a
there-
robbery.
There are rounds in question.
You know, and we've been doing like a lot of rescores, and one of the things that we learned going back is that all these robberies on the night, if there's like a heavy opinion, it's hard for that fight to get away from that opinion. We've seen that with like the Bradley Pacquiao fight. We've seen that with other fights where we look back and go, that wasn't really so much of a robbery. But like once it's cemented and ingrained in people's heads, especially if they don't go back and watch it or they're not objective, yeah, you know, there's a running narrative, you know, and so it's like I think people who are open-minded could see a draw with this fight. So I don't think it's a robbery, and I think that there's
Another thing with that, real quick, is and me and D-Style have talked about this before as well, is not even like a lot of boxing fans, not just casuals, don't score round per round. Like they're not like us. They don't sit there with the pen and paper. They don't go round by round and score.
Like a
this.
bunch of nerds like this.
Yeah, but I can see how somebody, and I was sitting there with casual fans for this fight, and they all had Golovkin winning, but clearly, and they thought it was a robbery. But I can see how somebody could watch this fight for 12 rounds and not score it round per round and think that it's a robbery for Golovkin, because it just felt like, and a lot of it had to do with the middle rounds, Golovkin, it just felt like he took control of the fight. But if you score it round for round, you take into account the early rounds, the championship rounds, I could see how you could get to a draw with this fight if you take 2 of those swing rounds and give it to Canelo. I just think like you have to, in order to get to Canelo 7 rounds though, I think you have to be like, you had to really be looking, because as I'm watching this fight this morning and rescoring it and looking at it round per round again, like I thought, my memory, like I thought Canelo was more aggressive and performed better in this fight. And just watching it, like I don't know. Like it just felt like Golovkin won this fight.
Well, I could see why you say when you sit with casuals that they all think Triple G won this fight, because we did want a war. Golovkin was the one pushing the action in the mid to late rounds, and Canelo looked like he was evading some of the fight at times, sometimes in the pocket, sometimes out of the pocket. And when he was out of the pocket, I docked that against him. But a lot of this fight was fought in the pocket. And like I said, you know, there was a lot of commentary that was extremely biased, just like D-Style said. I heard the DAZN commentary as well. I felt like they were biased as well. On top of that too, they were already taken away from Canelo's status. They were like, oh, the real champion is Golovkin. Like, I guess Canelo has the lineal. Like, I guess he's lineal. Like, oh, like lineal and Ring Magazine champion doesn't mean anything. Like, I thought that was kind of bizarre too. They were framing it like Triple G was the unified real champ, and he was a unified champion. But I mean, he was given that WBC belt that Canelo dropped, and Canelo was the lineal and Ring Magazine champion. And to me, that's the real champion going in. Not that it made a difference on how I scored it, but I felt like Canelo just didn't get enough respect going in general.
Yeah, and to be fair,
okay,
yeah, to be fair, and I'm not just saying this because we're all talking about the commentating, but I literally did not watch the commentating, obviously because my headphones were dead, and then plus I wanted to watch this with no commentating, so that way I could try to be as fair as possible. Because yes, you know what, judges can be, the commentating can be very biased. And yes, this, if we look back on it, this is the fight they've been calling for since 154, correct? So it didn't happen at 154. It ended up happening at 160. So, there was a narrative as well. Oh, well, Canelo is ducking him. Canelo doesn't want to fight him, this, and that. That's why if you think about it now, there was a majority of Mexican fans that were not a fan of Canelo. Not just because, oh, he's rich, he's a good-looking guy, he's winning. Because they're like, well, he's not fighting the guys that we're not asking for. We didn't get the fight when we wanted the fight at 154. So, now we're getting the fight at 160. So there was also this, well, Triple G was a little bit older. Like, to me, I didn't agree with that. I just felt like if this fight's going to happen, it has to happen no later than 160. And we did get that fight at 160. And again, this is why I didn't watch this fight with commentating, only because I feel if I was hearing the commentating, and they were, like you guys were saying, they were pretty heavy Triple G, then I would have felt like I would be swayed and persuaded to try to, what, they're not being fair. I'm going to have to give Canelo this round or maybe that round. And again, like I said, for me, there was a lot of swing rounds. There was a lot of things that both guys did really well in each round. It wasn't like a complete dominance. When I leaned with Triple G winning these rounds, there were things that I was picking out of it that I thought gave Triple G these runs. And again, I think for me, going back to it, and I feel if you ask anybody like a casual or someone that watched the fight once, that's one thing I feel like that sticks out to them in their head is that Canelo, they won't say he used lateral movement. I feel like he did use lateral movement, and he was using it at his advantage because he's a counter fighter. So when people see this and they think it, they're like, oh, well, Canelo isn't trying to engage with Triple G. Well, Triple G is following him. And Canelo, yes, is landing these hard shots. And I just felt like, again, volume for me wins over, maybe 2-3 significant punches per round. I just feel like the volume. I feel like in Canelo's defense, he's trying to dictate the fight off counter. Triple G is trying to dictate the fight off of trying to create openings using his jab as his defense and his offense. That's why I feel like, again, it isn't a robbery, of course. Very close fight, very competitive, and we all know. I think the 118-110 is what got everybody going. We got everybody really upset, and then as it was this fight, Canelo Triple G. Canelo didn't have a very big support. I feel like because again, like the Mexicans wanted to see him fight. The people they want to see him fight, they wanted this fight back at 154. So along with the score and that narrative going into this, right? I mean, I have friends at work that went to the fight in Vegas, and it was pro Triple G, and I'm sure you guys saw it as well in the watching it on the screen. So I feel like this is why when people are calling it a robbery, this is where the robbery I think comes from. Is going into it, Triple G was it was pro Triple G crowd against Canelo.
I do want to say this. So I get it, but I will say this though, like. When Canelo got married in Mexico, like there was a whole sea and crowd of people cheering for the couple, like a royal couple. Like I'm not sure if he has the quote unquote hate in Mexico that people put out like that. I think he's a very popular athlete in Mexico. And if 25% of people hate him and they're loud, it's going to stand out. That's just how I personally feel about it. And just like LeBron James, he has, he's a popular athlete in the US and he has his haters, but he also has a lot of fans too, right? I think that's what Canelo brings. He brings a big, large, casual audience, right? And nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying a good percentage of them, even if it's just 40%, are going to quote unquote go against him, and I think it stands out. a lot of people. I hear a lot of people talk about how Canelo is not liked in Mexico, and that's just not true. Like, I'm not saying there's not people that don't like him, but he does get a lot of love over there too. And so I just want to put that out there. He's just a very popular athlete there. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like hate as in completely 100% can't go to Mexico and not be respected. I mean, think about it, right? The crowd was pro Triple G. You had Mexicans supporting Triple G. Why? Because he was giving you the fight that you wanted to see. You know, whether if it was the guy that you didn't want to see him fight against. I mean, he's been tracing Canelo since 154, but we get Amir Khan, and I think maybe of course Cotto, to win those bouts against Cotto. But that's where I feel like people were asking for this fight and why wasn't so much love. I'm not saying that it was complete hate. I just feel
there was pressure in good faith from Mexican fight fans for him to fight Triple G, and I think people confuse that. Like people believe that Canelo fans are just a bunch of fanboys, and like there is a lot of Canelo fans. You can go back to my channel, and I was calling him to fight Triple G, right? And that's what I wanted him to do, and like. That's what a real fan does. But I think a lot of people in Mexico rightfully were saying, hey, Canelo, we want to see you fight the best middleweight in the world. We don't want these Amir Khan fights. It was done in good faith. It wasn't done it wasn't done like to hate on the guy or none of that. They just wanted Canelo to do great things like his predecessors before him did. That's basically what it was. And guess what? He ended up doing it.
And you know what? Looking back at it, when Cotto versus Canelo happened at 155 for the lineal middleweight championship, you all know I'm Cotto-tarded, so I was cheering for Cotto. But I'm thankful years later that Canelo won that fight, because we would have never gotten Cotto versus Golovkin for the middleweight title. We wouldn't have. So Canelo was the lineal champion we deserved at the time, and he gave us this fight, the rematch, and now we're getting the trilogy. And I'm thankful for this because I think this is a great trilogy. It's going to be a great trilogy. But one last thing before I got to go. If you watch the last, for me, like the last 3 rounds, how Canelo fought this fight against Golovkin, there's no doubt in my mind, because they're a smart team. They're a high ring IQ, boxing IQ. There's no doubt in my mind, like Canelo and his team went and watched the last 3 rounds of this fight and said, this is the strategy we have to employ in the second fight. And he was more front foot dominant in the second fight. And that's why it was a better fight, more entertaining fight, and why Canelo, at least I got to go back and watch and score that fight as well. And maybe we'll do another one of these on Al Chile for the second fight, for the rematch. But I just feel like, from my memory, that the second fight, Canelo was more aggressive. And because of that, won more rounds on my scorecard. But we'll see. But I appreciate y'all having me.
Yeah, Calix, thank you for joining us, and we'll have you on hopefully for the next one, brother. Thanks for coming in. And one of the things I'd like to discuss real quick too is just the other thing is the perception of how Canelo was viewed in the YTBC. Now, for the last 2 years, it's been okay to root for Canelo and acknowledge how good he's been and how good his resume is and all of his accomplishments. But before that, it was not socially acceptable to root for Canelo Alvarez. And we were getting allegations that, hey, man, we're waiting too long for this fight. Like, all of a sudden, 2 years, when you think about Spence versus Crawford, does not seem that long to me. On top of that, we were hearing the allegation that Canelo was aging out Triple G. Aging him out, 35, that's old. Well, Crawford's about to be 35, and for some reason, people act like, well, that's not a factor. Like, to me, I don't know how you could say that it's not a factor for Crawford, but a factor for Golovkin. Like, nobody's really explained to me why that's okay. Like, and on top of that, 2 Triple G's at a higher weight class. So they say that the older you are, that in the higher weight class, like the easier it is to be able to be an older fighter and maintain your prime. So do you guys have any thoughts on the perception of all this in the YTBC and how things have changed?
Yeah, look, there's been a lot of different perceptions that have changed for sure. Okay. Just to give people a little rundown. I mean, first of all, people forget about this, and it's hard to believe this now, but there wasn't when I don't know if you guys remember, like Floyd Mayweather was behind Canelo for this fight. You know what I mean? They were saying, "Oh, Canelo's gonna box him." This was not like he was the one saying, Triple G straight up and down, no special effects." So he, like so he was really kind of rooting for Canelo right in that fight. And the reason I say that is because a lot of Floyd Mayweather fans had Canelo winning this fight like 8-4, 9-3, like the night of that fight. You know what I mean? Like because they were so happy that a guy that lost to Floyd outboxed Triple G. Like they try to make it into like since Canelo beat him, because this was Dante's Boxing Nation's triangle theory. You know what I mean? His triangle, not triangle theory, his pyramid scheme theory. Like whatever Canelo does, it makes Mayweather look good. Like, nah, I don't know about that, right? But that was just a big thing. But then it did become like a stigma to kind of praise Canelo in any way, shape, or form. Like it just started happening. And then when you think about it, like based on what? Like the guy was really like he was younger than Tank Davis is right now, and he fought Triple G. And people were acting like the dude hasn't done anything yet. At the time, he had a better resume than all these dudes. At the time, he fought Trout, he fought Mayweather, he fought Lara. You know what I mean? The guy fought Cotto, a future Hall of Famer. And people were, oh, no, this dude ain't shit, blah, blah, blah. Like, something just happened. And then the dude goes up, he fights a light heavyweight. He's getting criticized for that. This shit's insane, right? Fights his first fight at 116, fights Rocky Fielding. He gets crucified. Why? He got crucified because he fought Bivol. Why? Nobody else will get crucified for jumping up weight classes to fight the second best dude. Only Canelo gets crucified for that. It's just the truth, right? Like I'm just saying, only Canelo gets criticized for that.
And they were calling it a cherry pick too.
Yeah, but another point I wanted to make about earlier, look, I hear this a lot. I keep hearing people say things like, "Oh Canelo, he's not liked in Mexico. Canelo, like he's not. Nobody likes him. No, nobody. Like, let me tell you guys something, okay? If he wasn't liked in Mexico, all right, or if he wasn't liked by Mexicans in general, he wouldn't have packed, Cowboy Stadium, with 70,000 people cheering for him when the Brits couldn't come here, so that was not Billy Joe Saunders' crowd, right? He carried the crowd. Millions of people watch this dude in Mexico. They watch his fights. So I do believe that a lot of Canelo fans they're a quiet base, right? I'm talking about his very loyal supporters. They're not as vocal. Of course, you're going to have some, knuckleheads out there that say whatever they say, but don't take it out of the whole fan base because a couple knuckleheads decided to troll you or say mean things to you, or like, you know what I mean? Like don't multiply it by 100. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, so much saltiness, man. Over here, like, we're good. Nopal, you got any thoughts on this, man? I know you were going on back in the day, and, I don't want to spill any of your tea, brother, but, I know you were going at it with some people back then. I don't know if you want to share, man. What are your thoughts about the perception of Canelo back in the day?
It's crazy, man, because you fast forward to right now, and the boxing fans, they know all about these politics that go on with boxing. They know all about the purse splits and all that. But back when Canelo was trying to negotiate a fight with Triple G, nobody even cared. They were just straight up saying that Canelo was ducking Triple G. And to top that off, the negotiations was basically made hella public, bro. They were like, hey, we just offered Triple G $8 million to fight us. But, they're saying no. And guess what? The fan bases were basic, oh, no, that's not enough. You got to pay Triple G 50% of the purse, which was absolutely nuts, because how is a guy that couldn't even sell like 70,000 pay-per-views gonna expect that much from a guy who's already selling like 1 million pay-per-views versus Chavez versus, whoever he fought. But I mean, we know that he was already a pay-per-view star. So how are you gonna put those kind of basically, how are you going to dictate to Canelo? But nevertheless, the boxing fans hated Canelo that much that whatever Triple G and Abel Sanchez said, they were backing it up, basically. A lot of the fans were saying that Canelo wasn't even the A side on that because Triple G had all these belts. But mind you, out of all those belts that Triple G had, I don't even I mean, he got the WBC out. That wasn't even really his belt. He got that one because the WBC basically sided with them, and they wanted Canelo to share like 45% of his purse with Triple G, and Canelo was like, hell nah. Which I don't think they should have just gave him the belt the way they did. I think that was fucked up. And then the other belts, I don't know who the hell he beat to get those belts. He got them all on vacant opportunities. I think on the WBA he was elevated because the other guy basically, I don't know what happened, but he was just elevated on these belts because he had the regular. And so in reality, it sucks because, like I said, right now it seems like they're a little more lenient towards negotiations. They understand that certain fights are impossible, but back then they hated Canelo so much that anything the guy did, they were gonna hate on it. Even the Cotto fight, they were like, "Well, that should be Triple G's fight." But in reality, it's like Khaled said, Triple G would have never accepted that. Cotto would have probably never took that risk. Anyways, we know that even on the night of the fight with Canelo, he decided to vacate the belt on that night. Just so he didn't have to pay the sanctioning fee. The dude was smart, The dude was smart. And, so do you think he would have even took a fight versus Triple G? Hell nah. He would have probably never took that fight.
I don't know if he would or he wouldn't, but
there's
I
no
don't
way
think
he would have.
There's no way to know, I guess, is what I'm saying. But what I will say
he
is
would have asked
this.
for a catch weight, right? Because we know that.
I don't know.
He asked for a catch weight versus Gil.
George,
he
you're
dropped
the
it down to
Cotto fan. What do you think?
157.
Yeah, I agree, man. I don't think he takes that fight against Triple G. I feel like he was almost cornered in this Canelo fight, right? I mean, it's kind of like passing on the torch, especially at that weight class, especially what was at stake for the future, right? At the end of the day, look at boxing, we know, is a business. I mean, no matter the way we would look at it, negotiations, catch weights, paying for sanctioning fees, this and that. Boxing is a business, so they're going to do what is best for boxing at the end of the day. And of course, Vegas is going to have their hand in it. So,
and keep in mind the purse split that Canelo and Cotto had. I mean, the only way that Canelo got this fight is he agreed to letting Cotto get like 70% of the purse.
He B-sided.
On a pay-per-view that we know was mostly all Canelo because the Cotto fans didn't even turn up because they were afraid he was going to get knocked out. So a lot of them, didn't even go to the fight or anything like that. So, I don't think he would have took the fight versus Triple G. He's a businessman, and he was looking at, he's entitled to that. He was already older, whatever. But yeah, as far as that, I don't think he would have took that fight.
So I don't want to speculate on what Cotto would. He lost the fight to Canelo anyway, so it's whatever. But I just wanted to kind of touch on to me, people make way too much about, there's always that one judge, because take Canelo out of it. I see when Trout fought, when he fought one of the Charlo brothers, I believe both Charlo brothers, there was a judge that had it wide for the Charlos, right? Well, is it the same thing? Like, do people put that stigma on the Charlo brothers, right? Jose Benavidez, Jr. just fought Danny Garcia, one of the judges. Did he score for him or it was a draw? I forgot what it was, but they had it really close. I said, what the hell did that judge watch? What did the Benavidez's pay off a judge? What is this? You can go. Gennady Golovkin, in my opinion, got a huge benefit of the doubt against Danny Jacobs, right? Nobody's accused the judges of being corrupt or none of that. In my opinion, Floyd Mayweather got some pretty, I'm not going to call them gift decisions, but the benefit of the doubt. Did he get, did he pay off judges? I mean, I just think Canelo gets the stigma put on him because he just happens to be in close fights that are competitive, right? And since one judge is off or something, everybody just jumps on that and they just say he paid off that judge. Dude, you don't think by now somebody would have discovered or something would have come out by now about him paying off a judge? Something would have Do you really think he's doing anything different? Now, granted, promoters, managers, they indirectly do things. Okay, so let's say Chicano Prophet, George, and Nopal, they're gonna score one of my fights, right? So I go, hey, what's up, Chicano? Hey, yo, George, and hey, man, bring your ladies. We're gonna go out to dinner tonight. It's on me. You know what I mean? Red Lobster. You know, I'm just I want to just thank you guys for taking the time to score my fight. You know what I mean? I just appreciate you guys. You know, come suit and tie. If you don't have a suit and tie, we'll get one for you. You know what I mean? If you, the limo's going to pick you up, champagne, bottles, all that good stuff. You know what I mean? Now, do promoters do shit like that? Yes. Do judges know that if I don't score for the A-side guy, they may never call me again? Yes. Do judges front load cards early? Yes. Okay. But at the end of the day, there is no but it happens across the board. Everybody does it. And if anybody wants to have a conversation about how we need to fix that, I'm all for it. But what I'm not for is these conspiracy theories that Canelo is doing everything. Canelo is juicing. Canelo is paying off the judges. He's paying off the opponents to take dives. He's everything. He's doing it all. And then you ask yourself, well, if his opponent's going to take a dive, why is he paying off the judges and why is he juicing? Right? And we'll go on for it forever, right? But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man. Absolutely. I mean, it's if we think, I'm sorry, Nopal. If you think about it real quick, if you think about it, what we're doing here on YouTube, you know, a lot of people are looking for content or are looking for listeners and followers. And, you know, it's either like you're all the way for Canelo or you're all the way not for Canelo, or all the way for Floyd, not all the way for Floyd, all the way for Wilder, not all the way for Wilder. So, you know, you're going to have both sides that are going to want to stir or to try to bring in those followers. So I think that's where you get a lot of those stigmas, like you said, oh, he's juicing or he's paying off the judges and this and that. I don't think it's that way. Yes, I do think promoters can be snakes, or even the managers. I mean, I know not a lot of people like Teddy Atlas, but I mean, there's probably a reason why Teddy Atlas isn't commentating fights anymore, because he's been speaking his mind. If you look also the USA boxing, it's not in the Olympics anymore because the rep that boxing has been getting.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? I want to give a shout out to Canelo and Triple G. You know what? He's a worthy adversary. I've always loved trilogies. I think this is the fight of the year. It's the fight of the year that's made. The buzz is going to start soon. And on top of that, dude, I'll tell you what, we are going to get into the rescore. I want to thank D-Style. He had to get out, y'all. But I want to thank D-Style for coming in. I want to thank Calix Boxing for chiming in, and everybody in the chat. Brian, Boxing Historian, was here. Philly Drew Irish. Dave was here earlier. Puro Sur. Lots of folks were here. Thank you so much for joining us, man. And like, if you have a scorecard to provide for the rematch, we're going to do it, man. We're going to take a look at that second fight. Any final thoughts, fellas, before we close this one out?
No, man, this was freaking awesome. Honestly, you know, like I said, it's pretty good. And you know what? I think if I would have went maybe like second and third, I probably would have changed my scorecard. I'm not gonna lie there. I'm like, damn, I felt singled out for a second.
It's good that you went first, man. Because
you're still technically the new guy, man. And the new guy, you know, it's like, go ahead, you go first. You know, we'll see what happens. You know, but you know what? All we can do is ask for people to speak their mind. That's why I wanted people like Calix or anybody who's objective. That's why I wanted Brian, whoever, man. And if you feel strongly about this fight one way or the other, it's all good by me. If you think it was a robbery and Triple G clearly won, and you do you, that's fine by me. I don't care. I don't lose that much sleep over it. It's fine by me. And you know what? You're going to have to deal with it sooner or later, because what we've learned is over time, you know, people kind of forget these controversial fights and it doesn't sting as much. I mean, unless you're just going to go on hating like for like 10 years, right? People are going to forget. You know, look at Chavez, man. Like, I mean, things get referenced every once in a while, but I mean, things pass. Look at De La Hoya with Sturm. I mean, we could pull up a lot of examples that we've seen where, just people tend to move on from it, you know. And this was like 5 years ago, dude. You know what I mean? So I mean, Canelo's been around for a really long time, taking care of business for a long time. Supposedly, this was the time when he was ducking Charlo. Figure that one out. You know what I mean? Nopal, you got any final?
I just wanted to say, as far as Adelaide Bird's scorecard, that's basically just a person giving Canelo all the swing rounds, you know. Because I go back and I listen to all the rounds that people say are swings, and it's basically Adelaide Bird's scorecard. You know what I mean? Maybe she really appreciated that back foot style that Canelo brought. And, there was a lot of variation to what Canelo did. He was landing punches all over the place. I know that that if you from the beginning, like I said, and I don't mean to just restart this again, but I didn't really get a chance to say a lot of things. From the beginning, it's like Lampley, you can tell that there's the other two guys, Max and Roy Jones Jr., they clearly don't agree with what Lampley, but it's just like what he's saying is overshadowing everything that they're saying. And he's like, jab, jab, jab. And then a combination, and none of that was even landing, bro. Like, he was exaggerating like a mug. And I know that once HBO read their scorecard, right away, I forget, I think it was Max who said this was like the 6th round. Max said, well, I can see how people have the reverse scorecard for Canelo, And I think Lampley didn't agree with a lot of that. And even Roy Jones Jr., he was saying that Canelo was doing whatever he wanted in there. He was the one that was dictating the whole fight. And, I know that Kalex said that that it was the other way around, that Triple G dictated that. But in my opinion, Triple G only dictated the rounds that Canelo decided to take off, because of his energy. He didn't have enough energy to go full-fledged, So I think that was the only time that Triple G was able to dictate anything, because I believe the beginning of the fight and the end of the fight, Canelo really did his thing. And, he didn't have that much energy, and he gassed out a little bit, but nevertheless, when you gas out, the only time that's going to be important is if the other guy has enough balls to capitalize on that. And for some reason, man, Triple G was supposed to knock. And that was the narrative. Oh, Canelo doesn't want to fight him because Triple G is going to knock him out in 6 rounds. Abel Sanchez was saying that he was going to knock out Canelo with a jab. Nothing like that close happened, bro. The underdog, in my opinion, for me, he won. And I think that another thing that we have to take into consideration too is that Canelo was feuding with the WBC. So there could have been some corruption there where, they made it a draw, because had this have been somebody like Floyd, you would have seen nothing but Adelaide Bird scorecards right there. All 3 unanimously, probably.
Yeah,
for
and
Floyd.
Nopal, I don't mean to interrupt,
Yeah.
but one thing that I read was interesting. So on top of Canelo refusing to fight for the WBC championship belt, there was like this, I don't know how to pronounce it, like Huichual, like a
the
Mexican type
Huichol belt. Yeah.
There we go. And
For
he
Chavez
was,
Jr.
yeah, and he
Yep.
said he wasn't going to fight for it in this one either, So he was blacklisting the WBC until WBC, they had to make nice because I'm sure they wanted Canelo to represent the sanctioning body, So there's a lot of interesting dynamics of what was going on back then.
He snubbed that belt, bro, because remember, he fought Chavez before that, and that's when the WBC said, hey, we're going to make this commemorative. This is when they started with their BS belts. And Canelo was the first one to refuse it. He said, hey, you guys aren't dipping into my Kool-Aid over here. You know what I mean? And he snubbed the belt because they came in the ring and they're like, are you going to take it? And he's like, hell no, F that belt. You know what I mean? So just to stand up to the WBC, that took some balls. But did anybody highlight that and say, hey, Canelo's doing it the right way? Nobody even said that. But what I'm saying is he was feuding with the WBC. So do you not think that they have enough power to hold you back somehow? Or even the dirty drug test that came out or whatever, say, hey, Canelo's dirty? I don't know, man. A lot of that stuff does happen, but whatever. There was a lot of weird shit going on, man.
And then real quick, so we can move on. But the WBC thing, right, when he fought Floyd, remember Floyd trying to like have him hold the belt at the same time, and he just like said, no, fuck that belt. So I'm sure this has been going on a very long time. So that's a good point. I was just giving my thought real quick.
Oh yeah, we can look at, and that was when Canelo was 23. We're looking at Canelo, who's been fighting and taking care of business for over 10 years now, right? He's got the best resume in boxing, period. And we're going to be looking at Canelo versus Triple G 2 next. It might not be our next episode, but that's the next one that we're going to rescore to wrap it all up. We've done over 40, you know, and it's been great. And we're going to take a look at all of them when we wrap up the series, just to kind of give you guys a list of everything that we've done and how we see it. But I want to thank everybody for coming to check this one out. We hope to see you the next time. George, with Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA, man, thank you so much for participating in this. Even though you're one of the crew already, you know, I love hearing you chime in. Nopal, Boxianos, the homie who's been with me from jump. You know what I mean? So we are out, guys. Peace.